Shut up and sit down.
Welcome to the Chasing Issues program. I'm your host, Greg, and my co-host is Rob.
How you doing? It's a Tuesday. Feels like a Monday. Got that third presidential debate coming up, and I think the country is just a little down. So we got to turn the motivation up, wouldn't you say?
Oh, I agree. So this podcast walks the conservative gray lines of all issues, society, politics, and current events. You name it, we'll discuss it. All right, Rob, you're right. It is a Tuesday. Feels like a Monday. I'm getting hit again. As you mentioned, we have the third presidential debate coming up, and we have mommy wars, a little society and politics. So let's start it off today. We've got mommy wars. Everybody loves a social issue gone viral.
So I was a little surprised you had posted this mommy wars article on our Facebook a while back, and it got a lot of hits and a lot of attention. And this was something that seems to be almost like the social networking of the 90s. Where people were using the Yahoo chat and all this kind of stuff to kind of secretly go behind the scenes and network with other people. So that was your mommy wars.
That's true. And just to further explain exactly what we're referring to with mommy wars, basically there was a mom Facebook group. It's strictly for mothers that they could go and, as they titled it, have a safe place. Somewhere where there's no fear for their safety, and they can just let loose and talk about anything that they wanted to, and they could have a voice on any subject, anything under the sun, you name it, they discussed it basically. However, doing a little bit of research, a lot of their comments were what's known as troll comments. In other words, they were there just to get the maximum effect and to escalate a conversation. Sometimes for anger, other times for laughs, and we understand that. If you go to any of the social media outlets that are out there, you go to Reddit, you'll find a lot of trolls. Like I said, sometimes it's to make someone angry, other times it's just for fun. Majority of the time, it's just for fun, and it's just to get a laugh. However, with this article and this discussion, it got out of hand really fast. The initial discussion was a joke about a military wife committing adultery. And oh my goodness, the responses were in the thousands, and they were varied.
So this thing got so much attention, and it kept on going for weeks that we really couldn't ignore it. And that's the reason that we've put it on this podcast today, because there was such a want for this stuff. So we felt compelled that we had to at least talk about it. Interesting, the topic of sex selling. I mean, basically, and this struck a nerve for us because we're former military. We would go on deployments overseas and, our wives are back here, or it would be husbands in another case or whatever. But this just really struck a nerve. And all these people, it was all this different debates, like, were they there to troll? Were they not there to troll? Was it really happening? Was it not really happening? Interesting how out of all the topics you can talk about, this thing was high up on the list, and it was just going and going and going until finally it started to peter out. But it was such a big topic, we felt we had to kind of bring it up. And who knows what will happen after this? They might start talking about it again.
That's true, and I'm glad you brought that up. You're right. As former military members, we've seen the devastation where it was a serious conversation where someone was having an affair, and whether it's going to be the military member or a wife, it is sad. It's not just the person having the affair or the people having the affair that are devastated by it. It's the other spouse. It's the family members surrounding, whether it be mother-in-laws or father-in-laws, or it be the kids. They're the ones that are most devastated by it. And you're young. Most of the people that are in the military are fairly young, and they don't rationalize things, keeping in perspective their marriage. They're young, and they're just kind of going with what feels good. They're feeling lonely. We get that. Now, in this case, though, like you pointed out, we had to address this issue because while we realize there are a lot of trolls within this Facebook mom group, whether or not this initial conversation was a troll conversation starter or if this person was serious is kind of the issue. So if she was serious, then she was reaching out, and it was a she that posted this conversation, obviously, since it's a mom group. She was reaching out for basically approval by the group to, hey, I want to do this. My husband's away. How do I do this? And it really, the trolls came out in full force. Everything from accusations that some of the commenters were of the alt-right. There were death threats. There were gender harassment issues. There was harassment issues because some people felt that she was in the wrong. Other people were laughing it off and making extreme jokes on the other direction because they felt that it was just a conversation starter for fun. And I don't know that they themselves even knew. They were there just to have fun and make a comment and kind of roll with it. So it kind of, for me, it made me wonder what kind of reflection are these people to society? Do they themselves do any self-reflection? Did at any point, any of the ones that were making jokes and having fun with it, did any of them stop and say, "Wait a minute, is this person real? Do I need to make a logical and thoughtful, articulate post, to either say yay or nay, or do I just I'll make a joke and roll about my business in life?" Because that's kind of what we need to do in society. Granted, not everything is a serious topic. We like to have fun with every topic as much as possible. But at the same time, you have to think, wait a minute, is this person joking or is this person real? And I conducted a poll on our website, and it's pretty much split down the middle. Last time I checked, it was about 36-37. And 37%, just 1% more believed that it was a real question. So, you could definitely see that if it is a joke and it was all in fun, then at some point somebody needs to say, or even the original poster needs to say, "Hey, I was just joking. Let's have fun with it." I mentioned at the beginning of the conversation how that this group was known for trolling. There was another post that they created that was in serious fashion where they had one of the members of the group post as if they were real and serious that they were pregnant with a horse. And it got picked up by the regular news media that this girl actually believed that she was pregnant with a horse. And it went viral. So maybe that's their shtick. Maybe they want to have these stupid, silly stories that are really just out there to be picked up by legitimate media. And that's a whole other topic for another show, that the media just runs with these stories and they don't do any background investigation. We did not want to come down on either side. And I tried to straddle the fence when I posted the article. However, I think I failed at it, and it was pointed out really quickly, and that's why I posted an update, a second article to clarify that, hey, look, we're not into death threats. We understand it can be just all in fun, and that's not fun. And so shame on you if you made any death threats towards them. But I also wanted to be quick to point out to the girls in the group that, hey, look, there are a lot of people, joke or not, that do not think this is funny. They're very offended by it. And, you do have the right to have fun in your private little group. But at the same time, this is a very, very sensitive subject, especially to those of us that have served and ever had to worry about while we were deployed, is Jody making a call at our house? Not that I didn't have faith in my wife, but you know what? When Jody comes calling, it's fair game.
Okay, so I think it was kind of comical because right in the middle of it, we were making comments of, is this people coming on here about trolling, performing trolling while they're even on the trolling site, So it was starting to get a little bit ridiculous, and then eventually that thing got shut down, right? So whoever was hosting that, it got shut down.
It wasn't even just the comments got shut down. The actual Facebook group apparently got reported and it got shut down. And now right. I do know that they've restarted. And they've taken another name. It used to be Mommy Wars because they were playing on the fact that there was a book apparently written a few years ago about Mommy Wars, and it was all about the struggles of a mom at home, either being a single mom or a mom that's a stay-at-home mom, and what they have to deal with throughout their day-to-day life, and sometimes the loneliness they have. And we get that. I've spoke with my wife. When my wife and I were in the military, and I say we were in the military because even though I was the military serving member, it's a joint thing like all things in marriage. And I think that was the biggest thing that was missing within this group discussion was that it's not a his or her thing. When you're married, it's a group thing. You're now one person basically, even though you're still two separate individuals. You do things as a person, as a marriage. And so my wife, when we were in the military, she was a stay-at-home mom, and it was refreshing when I came home for me to grab our son and go play and give her a little me time.
So the mommy wars is a big deal. We felt compelled we had to talk about it, but we have another topic that we are going to cover, and that is the third presidential debate coming up, tomorrow, right?
It's coming up tomorrow.
So that takes place at the University of Nevada in Las Vegas. No other presidential candidate met the 15% polling threshold to qualify for the debate. So we have the two, runs from 9 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. Eastern time without commercial breaks. So we'll be doing the Twitter feed on that, like we always do with these debates, where we are twittering out responses and whatnot. Right, Greg?
We will. Or at least I will. If you're going to be available, then I'm assuming that you're going to be as well. But I'll certainly be watching online. I usually watch from Twitter. They do have a special live feed with whichever network is the host. I do know that first, we do need to take a word from our sponsor. The music on this podcast is brought to you by bensound.com, where you can download royalty-free music at no charge. You can use this music in YouTube, a podcast, or any other multimedia project. Ben Sound can be found at bensound.com. Once again, that's bensound.com. Royalty-free music by Ben Sound. Are you looking for a web host for your blog or website? The startup plan at siteground.com gives you all the essential hosting features you need to accommodate a just getting started website or an existing average-sized blog, personal or business website. www.siteground.com, web hosting crafted for superior experience. So back to the third presidential debate. Like you already pointed out, the third presidential debate will be between Clinton and Trump. What a great word together, right? On October 19th at the University of Nevada in Las Vegas. So no other presidential candidate has met the 15% polling threshold to qualify for the debate. So that means Gary Johnson and Weld will be out. They're not going to be there, and neither will Jill Stein with the Green Party. The debate will run 9 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time without commercial breaks. And so, as I pointed out before, we're going to be watching it on Twitter, and we will be tweeting live during the break, or excuse me, not during the breaks, but throughout the debate. The moderator is going to be Chris Wallace, who is the anchor of Fox News Sunday. Wallace is a 3-time Emmy Award-winning anchor for Fox News Sunday, so hopefully he will have a little bit better control over the two candidates, more so than the other two debates. The format for the debate is going to be split into 6 15-minute segments covered, each of the topics picked by Wallace, and both Clinton and Trump will have 2 minutes to respond to a question, and then another chance to respond to their opponent as well. Wallace will use the leftover time to expand on any of the discussion topics, and the topics themselves will be immigration, entitlements and debt, the Supreme Court, the economy, foreign policy, and then each candidate's fitness to serve as president. That's a very interesting topic there, that last one.
Now, have you noticed that these 6 topics, these are pretty much conservative type ideals, right? I mean, you just see that. All those right there have a lot to do with the conservative viewpoints, what they kind of care about. And Fox covering it, I mean, that makes sense. So it looks like with all 3 debates covered, we pretty much have covered the entire spectrum. But what we all kind of is daunting to every one of us is what ends up happening. They end up attacking each other. It's almost like a war, and that's being from the military. You could really see, like, they're using all the Sun Tzu tactics are coming out. I mean, they're just attacking each other. So
well, and to some extent, a presidential debate does end up being attacks. It's not just a debate on the policies or a debate on the topics. That's what they're supposed to be for. But you're right. When there is a topic that one of the candidates or one particular party is extremely passionate about, in this case, say Trump with his immigration stance, then you can easily see how there's going to be a very heated debate surrounding this topic. Now, the Supreme Court may or may not have a very heated debate. I can see certainly entitlements and debt because they have extreme difference in views on the entitlements and debt. And then, of course, the economy and foreign policy as well. And then as far as personal attacks and things getting extremely heated, wow. As much as I love to hear a debate on the economy, I have to tell you, the last topic, that each candidate's fitness to serve president, I think was going to be a show buster.
So during the last presidential debate, or for the last presidential debate, it usually pulls in less viewers than the other debates. 2012, you had 41 million people tuned into the third debate between Obama and Mitt Romney, and that was according to the Nielsen ratings. So to compare, 45 million people watched the second debate and just over 46 million watched the first one. So back in 2008, 56 million people watched the third debate between Obama and Senator McCain, down from the 63 million, but up from the first debate between the two candidates, which garnered 52 million people. You look at the numbers now, we're talking into the hundreds of millions watching debates, and who knows how many are going to watch this third one. So the trend in 2016 matched the 2012 debate and the second term of Obama. The last debate between Clinton and Trump had a viewership of 66.5 million people, down from the record-breaking 84 million viewers who watched the first debate between the two presidential candidates. So what we feel like at the Gray Lines here is that this third presidential debate needs a little bit of pride in country. I mean, this is literally stressing people out. You hear it all the time. You hear it on the radio. You hear it from your friends. And personally, we feel like their war on each other is killing us. You know, I mean, it's just, this is getting a little crazy. So what we want to talk about this time is how business experience relates to a president, and do we support it? Do we think that business should be part of their resume? We most definitely feel that. Now, we do swing on the conservative side, but walking the gray lines, what we're going to attempt to do all throughout our time doing this is that we're gonna be looking at basically the three parties: Republican, Democrat, and Libertarian. Now, Libertarian is an interesting topic because many people are beginning to really sway that way. But do they know exactly what they're talking about? We're going to define all this later and start making up some decisions, but we're going to do it in a different way. Mitt Romney suggested that U.S. presidents should require in their resumes at least 3 years of working in business. Tomorrow we have 2016's third presidential debate with a seasoned businessman and a longtime established politician. We really do need some uplifting motivation right now. Most of the population in the U.S. is very negative about both candidates. Wondering how and why we got here with these two, whether conservative or liberal. We think it's safe to say that successful business in our country is something that nobody would deny is a great concept. 8 U.S. presidents have been in business before they held the highest office in the land, and we want to talk about them. We want to give brief little synopsises. We also think that our time in the military, although the military is not a business, it has businesses all throughout, and all the leadership principles and all the things that they cover in the military brings you right in line with that. It also makes you a very successful person in all endeavors that you go about.
And I'm glad that you mentioned, the military is not a business. You're right. But the one thing that the military does is it teaches you, for one, discipline right off the bat. And two, it also teaches you flexibility. And in business, in order to be successful as a business person, you have to be flexible. You have to be willing to adapt and shift towards the will and want of your customers.
So Greg, do we have that clip on Donald Trump back in the day, 30 some years ago or whatever? And what we want to show you here is the seriousness that it appears that Donald Trump was always portraying about business. And we are pro-conservative, so Donald Trump happens to be the guy right now. We consider him more of a populist, but we also believe that because of his background with military school, which started him out on discipline, with all the business colleges that he was sent to, and his relentless pursuit of success, we still think he's a pretty good business guy. despite some of the failings, and especially this video that came up last time, we're a little leery about that ourselves, but we're still hanging in there with the Trumpster. So here was Trumpster, 30 years ago? That's fine. Oh, yeah, the Trumpster.
Donald Trump, as I say, is just 33 years old. He took his father's rather modest by current standards real estate empire in Brooklyn and expanded it considerably. He now has an apartment for sale in a new Trump building called the Trump Tower going up on 5th Avenue. There it is.
How successful is that?
You can buy this apartment, one floor of it, one whole floor of that building, that is, $11 million altogether.
In the 70s.
You
in the 80s, I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is 1980.
New York market in the 1970s. Inner cities have been pure gold since that time. Why? Because replacement costs have just gone up so much?
Well, no, not really. I had a great faith in New York. Primarily, our purchases have been in New York. And about 5 years ago, New York was not considered very hot, and cities in general weren't considered too hot. And we purchased the old Commodore Hotel, and we've reconverted that now into about $110 million Grand Hyatt Hotel, which is opening up next week in New York City. And we've made some other purchases that have been fine.
Is that your general advice to people who are interested in real estate investment, though? Look to the inner cities, look to old buildings and doing something with them?
Well, I like the inner cities. I see the inner cities as being sort of a wave of the future now. I think with the problems of fuel and the gasoline shortages and everything else, and the transportation, especially in the major cities such as New York and Los Angeles and Chicago, I see the inner cities as being probably, in terms of a real estate or in a real estate sense, probably the most viable investments.
But it's going to be expensive. Apartments in New York City alone, one bedroom, not very large at all, $650 a month. That's tough for the working class, isn't it?
And that's actually now a very low price. In fact, if you have any of them available, I'd like to...
I know where I can sell 1,000 of them at that price.
Right.
Actually, that is a low
That's
price.
Right. That's really a very low price now. I know of a couple of buildings, for instance, an Olympic Tower, which is on 51st Street and 5th Avenue. Apartments are being rented by the condominium owners for $5,000 and $6,000 a month, and they're one-bedroom and two-bedroom apartments. So it's, when you say $600, even in other sections, it's almost becoming a low price.
What happens to some of the old buildings in the inner cities that are works of art? You were recently the object of a lot of controversy because you destroyed some sculptures on a building that you bought that the Metropolitan Art Museum wanted. Why did you have those destroyed, first of all, and what happens to the look of a city?
Well, what we had is we purchased a site with an old department store on it, the old Bonwit Teller store on 5th Avenue and 57th Street next to Tiffany, and we had to really take the building down. And there were many people that didn't want us to take it down. They wanted to try and preserve the building. But the building really was not worth, as an art building or an Art Deco building, it really was not worth very much. And we did take it down, and there was somewhat of an outcry, but I think generally subsided now, and I think people like what we're doing and like the building that we're putting in its place.
But couldn't you have saved just those sculptures that you had broken?
Well, it would have been very, very dangerous to have saved them. They weighed 2 tons, they were 15 feet high, they were about 2.5 feet thick, and if they would have fallen, they could have fallen the opposite way. If they fall into the building, you don't worry. If they fall out toward 5th Avenue, people could have been very badly hurt and killed, and it just, to me...
All right, so he starts going on and on about the specifics of that construction. But the funny thing that strikes me about, listening to this from 1980 is, one, how quiet and calm and articulate he is. None of this huge walls kind of yelling and screaming, and he's
right.
Such a different person now.
Very, very business minded. You can see that. And now he starts talking about basically the subject of project management. And then he's talking about safety and security, and people might get hurt. He's involved in the actual production of what's going on here. This is a very serious guy, just like we talked about before. Thousands and thousands of decisions being made. What more do you want from a leader? You want decisions to be made and no fear doing that.
Well, it's those are great points, but a lot of people criticize when he's giving a speech or when he's talking to a debate about why is he bringing up the inner cities? Well, hello, did you just not listen to this clip? He's been talking about rebuilding the inner city since 1980 that I'm aware of because of this clip and some other ones that I found. And so for him, you can tell that this is a very passionate subject. And I think it's not just because he wants to rebuild and revitalize the cities from the standpoint of the way that they used to look and where they were at their grand presentation and their maximum value. But I think it's because if he rebuilds, then he can not only basically polish up the city and make it look fresh and renew again from structures that are old, he's going to get his money's worth. For a business person, it's always about the ROI, the return on investment. And so I think for him, the way he certainly talks about it, he feels he's going to get his most return on his investment that way. And I think that's also kind of how he looks at things from a political standpoint. In what way, and we should all look at it really in this perspective, is what way can we get the most return on our investment? And so that's one of the things that always has me confused is you've got your one issue voter, whether you're for abortion, but yet if you look at all the rest of the things that you believe in, you may be a conservative. However, just because you support abortion, you don't feel that the conservative parties, and I say conservative parties because I lump the Republican Party and the Libertarian Party kind of together in that group. If you don't believe that they're going to support your one stance, you're going to go vote Democratic for that one issue. So you have to ask yourself, at what point am I going to get the most return on my investment? So are you going to go to the Democratic Party for that one issue and then have to spend all the rest of your time fighting against the other issues that you disagree with? Or would you get more of your return on your investment if you were to work within the conservative parties and try and change just that one issue?
So I like what you said right now. You brought up money, and that's like a sore subject for me all the time. I'm always telling people I work with and friends, like, hey, it's all about money. Everything is all about money. Money is our trade system. It's our bartering system. It's how we consume things, how we get things, how we obtain things. Anybody that wants to go out there and talk down money and say, it's just not important, it's not priority. Well, go ahead and start handing them, some of that type of stuff and see what's going to happen. Everyone will change their tune. We're talking about the gray lines. We're talking about the bottom line, the bare essentials, the main. It's about money. Let's not kid ourselves. It always takes money to do things, and that's where it comes in. So all these smoke and mirrors of them, people trying to talk about it's not about the money. Come on, you're really kidding yourselves. Now, for this election, we were focusing on presidents who have been in business. Out of all the presidents we've had, only so many of them have been in business. And what you're going to find is that in our earlier years of the country, there were more presidents in business than our later years. About the last 30 years, there was less people in business since our inception. So the country has been on somewhat of a change from prosperity and business to more politics. They're starting to learn how the system works, and they start taking advantage of the system and actually how they can get that money. So it's more about politics now. So who was the first president we had, Greg? What was the first guy?
So the first one on the list would be Abraham Lincoln. Served 1861 to 1865. He patented a device to move riverboats over sandbars. He owned a general store and ran a law practice. Of those, most people know that he was a lawyer before he became a politician. But, whether people realize it or not, even those who practice medicine or practice law, they have to be a business person because you've got to balance your books in order to be successful, or you're going to go out of business. You're not going to be able to keep practicing medicine or practicing law. It takes some business acumen to stay successful. So he also promised not to interfere with individual states' rights, which I have to laugh at because he's known for not recognizing individual state rights. But okay, he was an avid
comes
reader.
the war.
Yeah. And that's a whole other topic we'll tackle another time. But he was an avid reader of Shakespeare and other poets. And one quote from him: "Always bear in mind that your resolution to succeed is more important than any other one thing." And I think that's fantastic. It's all about determination.
So I like that quote because look at that. Your resolution to succeed is more important than any other one thing. Who does that sound like? What kind of leader does that die hard sound like? Doesn't quit, have to resolve everything, have to keep moving forward. Business people. That's business people, and we know which candidate is on the business side.
True. And if you look at most business owners, people like Steve Jobs that hit it out of the park, it's seemingly their first business operation, those are so rare. Most business owners have tried over and over and over again, sometimes not even their third or fourth or fifth attempt at a business is they're going to be the one that they're known for or successful at. It's going to be sometimes their seventh or their ninth. And each time, people do get lucky and they do pick up the right skills or knowledge or abilities to be successful that first time. But for most people, when they kick off and become a business owner and they strike out on their own, they are going to fail a few times and learn. Take away those necessary little nugget to be successful that last attempt or the first successful attempt, because you've got some people that are business owners that are successful over and over and over again. Look at Elon Musk. He went through a couple of businesses, and then he signed up with X.com, and that eventually went in with PayPal, and then he made a bunch of money, and now he's operating Tesla. And Tesla's expanding. They're building their gigawatt factory. They're wanting to get into the home solar panel market. They're also wanting to fund space exploration. So once you find and you've gathered within your toolbox these individual tools to make you successful, you can keep moving forward over and over and over again and be successful at just about anything you put your mind to.
So the next president we have was Warren G. Harding from 1921 to 1923. 1884, he was 19, and he had several friends, purchased a small newspaper in Ohio called the Marion Star. He went in on that with his friends. His wife, Florence, helped run the business operations for the newspaper, which became a great success. So once again, another person that was trying their own business, you know, the American dream, and that helped him later to become somebody who can make decisions. If you don't practice making decisions, you're never going to be able to make those decisions. You're going to be apprehensive. If you don't have the experience, you're probably going to make the wrong decisions. So I think it's pretty important of what they did in the past that can mold them into doing great things in the future. Because his quote was, "America's present need is not heroics, but healing. Not nostrums, but normalcy. Not revolution, but restoration." Once again, the country's in dire straits and has to be repaired. So that's where Harding came in. And he got that probably from all his business dealings on how to do all that.
Correct. I believe so as well. And sometimes I think that's where our politicians fail to deliver. They need to reach out to to their constituents, whether they're a governor for a state and they reach out to the state citizens, or as a president, and they need to talk to the citizens as a whole and say, look, this is where we're at. Sometimes you got to get down to, like you said before, brass tacks. This is what we have to do to move forward. And sometimes they're too polished. They need to be a little bit more off the cuff. They need to show a little bit more emotion, but not play on emotion. And that will spur and motivate people into action. So our next president is Herbert Hoover, 1929 to 1933. So he had a geology degree from Stanford University under his belt, and in 1908, Hoover launched his own mine engineering business. His company employed 175,000 workers and specialized in reorganizing failing companies, seeking new mining prospects, and finding investors to pay for high-production mines, which I think is just phenomenal. Especially that first part, reorganizing failing companies. So he's already identified things that will make it successful, and he's just reusing that same process to change failing companies. That is phenomenal. So for Herbert Hoover's quote, competition is not only the basis of protection to the consumer, it is the incentive to progress. There again, blows it out of the water. Competition. You've got to have competition no matter what you do. I don't care if you're offering a phone service or if you're delivering mail or if you're running a plumbing business. There is nothing like competition to make you step up your game and be the best that you can be.
I'm thinking of healthcare right off the bat, right there. That's like just threw it out right at me.
Yep.
Healthcare. So
if you remove those boundaries state to state for competition, like here in the Midwest, depending on which state you pick, whether you pick Missouri or you pick Iowa, Illinois, Kentucky, each state is going to have a separate group of allowed insurance companies to operate within that state. In Kentucky, it might be 3. In Illinois, it might be 5. In Tennessee, it might be 10. Each state is going to be different, but it's based upon legislation. And so, like you pointed out, if you remove those boundaries and let any insurance company in to compete against each other, the only winners are going to be, everybody. Because not only will each individual insurance company win, but the most important thing is the citizens of the states will win. For one, Each insurance company will offer different perks or different benefits. They're not necessarily perks, but benefits to their insurance plans. But there's also going to be competition. Prices may go down across the board, but more than likely they'll go down based upon what perks or what benefits that you choose for your package. And so while one may not be the best fit for you, you might find one that is specifically tailored for you, and it will be cheaper or it will offer the most benefit. But if you're not going to have that if you don't remove those boundaries, and if you've only got it fixed with only a limited amount of competition of three insurance groups, that's not enough. That's not going to cut it.
So I really like the next president, Franklin D. Roosevelt, from 1933 to 1945, pretty much up to World War II time frame. He was more on the liberal side in our viewpoints, right? Wouldn't you say?
Oh, very much so.
So he founded the Roosevelt Warm Springs Institute for Rehabilitation in 1927. Today, the Warm Springs, Georgia-based institute serves about 4,000 people with numerous disabilities every year. Poor guy had polio. And I'm going to read his quote. I'm going to talk about his quote because it's very it cries out for what's going on today. The country needs, and unless I mistake its temper, the country demands bold, persistent experimentation. It is common sense to take a method and try it. If it fails, admit it frankly and try another. But above all, try something. So you got to act. And some people, that's their belief, is that if they go out and do, 512 efforts and fail on 6, they feel that's a pretty good average right there. So we're talking about business people for our president. And if we're going to just be scared when somebody fails something and we're going to annex them because they failed, I think that guy who failed or that girl who failed is better than we are, and we don't know what we're talking about because America was founded on try, and we need to continue to try and continue to do. But that's, there's a whole lot of topics on that one as well, talking about all that trying.
I think the biggest indicator for me between a business person that becomes a politician and someone that's always been a politician is that how do you exactly gauge success for a politician? It's fairly easy for a business person. Are they running a profitable and successful business? Have they built things? In other words, have they had great projects that they can easily show off? And I understand that it's not just the single businessman themselves that have built it. They have a team surrounding them. But it's the fact that they led that effort and they were the ones that brought that effort to fruition. But how do you gauge a politician? Is it merely because they've passed X number of bills, or they sponsored X number of bills, or they co-sponsored, or at what point? I mean, how is it that you would define success? Is it constituency happiness? Or do they get consistently reelected? That just means they're a good campaigner. That doesn't mean that they're a good politician, that they've benefited their constituents that well. Just because you co-sponsor a lot of bills doesn't necessarily mean that you're successful. That just means you're good at saying, "Hey, bud, I got your back." And then you could propose bills all day long that will eventually be signed off into law, but is that a true indicator? You could be good at schmoozing, you could be a perfect lobbyist, you could be whatever you want to call it, a good networker. So it's really hard to define success in continuously climbing the ladder as a politician. There again is not really a success either, because you could be a failure at each one. You're just good at campaigning and moving up.
So it's almost, if we really want to get down to the brass tacks, what's your favorite holiday, Greg? Which one would you say?
That's a hard one, but I really like Christmas and the fact the family comes together. We exchange gifts and spend a little bit of time as a family.
You just hit the nail on the head. Free gifts. That kind of seems like that's what our politics all about right now. Free gifts. It's all about the handout. They talk about the hand up. No, I think it's all about the handout, and it seems like right now, it's going to be the war between, the haves, the have-nots. Free Christmas gifts. It's hard to beat free Christmas. We've, dealt with that over the last few elections. That's been a big topic, on how it's very hard to win when someone's offering everything, but reality is there's not enough to go around. And you have to kind of invent stuff on the backs of our efforts for that free stuff to even occur. So who we got next?
Next, we got Harry Truman, which is fantastic because he was the vice president that took over after FDR when FDR passed away during his third term. And Harry Truman was also the one that dropped the bomb in World War II. So, 1945 to 1953, Harry Truman served in France during World War I. Then he returned to the United States and opened a men's clothing store in Kansas City, Missouri with his wartime friend, Eddie Jacobson. The shop succeeded for 3 years, but then failed during the post-war recession. So to quote Harry Truman, "I have studied the lives of great men and famous women, and I have found that men and women who got to the top were those who did the job they had in hand, with everything they had of energy and enthusiasm and hard work." And I think that's another great quote. Because just because you may not like the job that you're doing, if you do it with all the energy and enthusiasm and hard work that you can muster up, you'll still be a success.
Yeah, that last line, energy, enthusiasm, and hard work. That's a pretty good description for a candidate, isn't it?
It is. I wonder
who aligns well
yeah.
with that.
So moving right along to Jimmy Carter, 1977 to 1981. Jimmy Carter's father died in 1953, and the family farm was in danger of being lost. He made the tough decision to resign from the Navy and return to Plains, Georgia, to run the peanut farm. Carter reportedly threw himself into farming the way he had with his naval duties, and hard work and effective management made the Carter farm successful by 1959. To quote Carter, "It's not necessary to fear the prospect of failure, but to be determined not to fail."
There we go, talking about failing and prospering again. So, like we said, hey, tomorrow's the election, or not the election, but the debate, and the country is in dire straits right now, and no one is talking about prosperity. They're not doing that anymore. All the motivational speakers that we always talk about, all the business practices, all that stuff seems to be in a vault locked up somewhere. We need to bring that stuff back out.
We do.
I mean, this is getting kind of crazy. It's depressing is what this is.
Yeah, in my mind, at some point, the commander-in-chief, the president, needs to be a little bit of a cheerleader. Not only does he have to be, or she, not only do they have to be, well, for one, they have to be honest, even to the point where it's brutal. They also need to be a little bit of a cheerleader and say, look, okay, let's rally the troops. Here's what we need to accomplish. Here's how we have to do this or do that, or this is the dire straits that we're in, and we have to rally ourselves. And Reagan was fantastic at giving speeches like that. And there's been a couple other presidents that were pretty good. I know FDR was the first one to start the fireside chats on the radios back during the Depression to try and keep people motivated and moving forward. And we don't really quite have that anymore. Instead, we've got a president who likes to talk condescendingly to us and talk about how we need to change. And, it's rubbed a lot of the populace the wrong way. And instead of criticizing us, he needs to cheerlead us, kind of coax us back into moving forward and motivating us to improve.
Yeah, I'd say support our own efforts rather than trying to tell us how to do it. Yep. Or creating things that get in our way. We want everybody, the people know how to prosper. Just stop putting walls in the way, barriers to stopping us.
And I think, too, that if you look at the rallies that Trump has been able to put together, he's got thousands and thousands of people that show up. And then, there's the people that are cheering, and then he's giving speeches. And even though he gets criticized a lot because he doesn't go too much into his policies, he's doing exactly that. He's motivating people and telling them to get out there. We're going to make America great again. He's providing that motivation. But then you go to a Hillary rally, and there's not anybody out there. Not only is the rally not populated very well, but there's no feedback, there's no excitement, there's no energy. Sure, you'll have a few rare that makes the news here and there, but for the most part, they're far and few between. And then even when you do get one here, it seems in this last week, where one makes the news is because somebody screamed out that Clinton is a rapist, referring to her husband and not to her. So it's making the news for the wrong reasons. It's not because she's pumping up her audience and motivating them to get out there. And so that also makes me think too. I drive around town and I see Trump stickers and yard signs everywhere. I don't know that I've even seen one Hillary sticker, and I know for a fact I've never seen a Hillary yard sign, but I think I may have seen one bumper sticker.
I think that depends on where you live, man.
Well, living here in the Midwest, believe it or not, even though we are a flyover state, there's a lot of voters that are Democratic.
Right.
It all goes back, and I've had long conversations to people here in the area about why, and it always goes back to Lincoln's Republic. So
well, now we come down to the two Bushes. First you had Big Daddy Bush, George H.W., From 1989 to 1993, he graduated from Yale University, and then in 1951, along with his neighbor John Overby, formed the Bush-Overby Oil Development Company. Family money helped finance those operations. So that sounds a lot like Trump, because that's how he started, with Bush's uncle Herbert Walker investing nearly $500,000. By 1953, Bush-Overby had merged with another independent oil company to form Zapata Petroleum, and in 1959, Bush moved to Houston as president of Zapata Offshore. So his quote is, "Equality begins with economic empowerment." So how are we going to get that economic empowerment? What's going to be the answer to that?
Yeah,
free market.
Free market. And
Yeah.
you know, I've had a lot of conversations, and I think a lot of people are confused exactly what a free market is. And basically, it is the free will to exchange something I have for something I want that you have. In other words, I've got dollars, you've got a CD. I will freely exchange my dollar for your CD if we can agree upon the price. That's as equal can get, because we're just two individual people and we have something the other wants, and all we need to do is reach an agreement. Nobody's forcing anybody. No one's under coercion in any way, shape, or form. It's by free will.
But now we've got entities that always try to get in there, and they're always trying to figure out how they can get a piece of your effort.
The government.
Yeah, getting that effort so that they can give it away to someone else, so they can gain some more power by getting their, Then
that's not empowerment. That's just enablement. They're enabling. Yep. So our last president is George W. Bush, George H.W.'s son, 2001 to 2009. He was the first U.S. president with an MBA. Bush invested $600,000 in Major League Baseball's the Texas Rangers. In 1998, he sold his stake in the team for $15 million, which is a 2,400% return on his initial investment. His quote, "Prosperity results from entrepreneurship and ingenuity." There again, it's all about what you put into it. So both of us, myself and Rob, we have spent time in the United States military services. I spent time in the Army and the Marine Corps, and Rob spent time in the Marine Corps. So it's not really business. As Rob pointed out at the beginning of this conversation about business presidents, we could not argue that basically the military services consist of many, many businesses within the military. You not only have to have project management skills, you also have to manage a budget. You also have to manage people. These are all skills or knowledge or abilities that a successful business person would have to either learn or pick up along the way as they are gaining success within their own business. And so the military can be a great incubator for a future business person. Concerning motivation, winning, and quotes, we shine in those areas being former military. There's always the quotes, "first in, last out," or "semper fidelis," or "always faithful." And there's "this will defend" and "Army strong." So let's take a look for a moment at what the two presidential candidates have as their slogans. Kind of do a little bit of comparison between the military slogans, which should reflect what the mission statement is, and let's look at what each individual candidates are and what vision that they stand for. So you've got Clinton, and hers is "stronger together." Short, simple, sweet, sounds pretty good, but what does that motivate you to do? There's no action there. It's just stronger together. That's really anticlimactic in my mind. Stronger in what way?
Clinton strong, so.
Stronger to accomplish what? There's no, I mean, the I'll have to edit this out or something. The ultimate, the very peak, and maybe I'll leave this in here, the very peak of advertising, in the advertising world for slogans is going to be, just do it. Do what? It doesn't matter, because whatever it is, you could just do it with Nike apparel, right? It doesn't get any better than that. And so if you want to compare stronger together, there's no call to action there. It's extremely weak. If you bounce it off, just do it, you're getting out there. You're just doing it. Just doesn't matter. Just grab some clothes and Nike apparel and specifics and just go do it. But stronger together, it doesn't represent much of a vision other than the fact that, hey, we're going to put some Legos together politically and we're going to be stronger together.
Maybe it's just more pandering to all considered in the United States.
Well, I think that's
stronger together. Everybody putting them together,
But there's no motivation there.
True. Donald Trump's "Make America Great Again" And they always try to construe that with a negative spin, as if America's not great. America is great. Everyone knows it. He knows it. The problem is they've taken the properties of America and they've limited and taken away the things about it and is making it not as effective or efficient. You could take the military as an example, and you could say their budgets have been cut so much that it almost renders them ineffective for what they are used to. So what it takes to get from here to there, to conduct business, to conduct operations, if they cut that in half, that's not going to be great. That's going to be dismal at best. So someone has to go in and look at it from a project management perspective and put it back the way it was and the way it worked. So we'd kind of like to go over a simple acronym the Marine Corps uses that we stood by these for a really long time, and we want you to consider what you can look for in a candidate. And the Marines call this the 14 leadership traits. We always have this little acronym, and to remember it, the JJ did tie buckle, very common for Marines, they all know. And real quick, it's just covering justice, judgment, dependability, initiative, decisiveness, tact, integrity, endurance, bearing, unselfishness, courage, knowledge, loyalty, and enthusiasm. Now, you could plug in any one of these to either candidate, and you could have a for or an against. But I say that when we watch this debate, we think about the properties they're supposed to have. We think about the quotes that other presidents have had, which are all pro-American, if you really look at it. Anything that you hear that is against America is really going against our country and what has gone on. Something is not right. It should all be pro-America, everything. And everyone should be assimilating into this working animal known as the United States that has been prospering forever and will continue. So, what else do you have to add, Greg, to this awesome American motivation?
Well, I kind of want to step back for a minute. And, you were talking about the difference between Trump and Hillary, specifically about Trump's slogan, "Make America Great Again." So I understand that some people don't view it as being that great, but what they're missing is the fact that it's not that America looks like an amusement park that's been beat down and let's polish it up and rebuild it. Everybody's missing the point. We're not talking about the infrastructure. We're not talking about anything other than the fact that the opportunity here is greater for the average citizen than anywhere else in the world. Everybody has a different version of what the American dream is. The general basis is, for most people, that our kids will be better off than what we were, whether it be through a work-life balance of a job or through finances or through health, whatever it is, their life is going to be improvement on our lives, that we're going to constantly move up the rungs of the ladder. And that opportunity is far greater here than anywhere else in the world. Not many places in the world are you going to be able to go and just, boom, kick the doors open, start a business, and start making money. And further, you're not going to be able to kick off and be a politician. Some countries, you have such a huge amount of regulations, especially like in Europe. They've got a lot of regulations before you even throw your shingle out and hang your sign up saying you're selling newspapers on the street corner. You've got to pay, hundreds or thousands of dollars just to get approval for the business license. Most cities, you can pay a $50 fee and you got your license, and you can kind of move on from there. And, if you go to other different countries, there may be a class warfare kind of issue where you're not even allowed to because you're the bottom of the rung. You can't even start a business. It's not going to happen. So if you look back within the history of the United States, we've got immigrants that have come to the country and immediately they can be productive. And that, at the end of the day, is how productive of a citizen are you? Granted, we're not necessarily judging, but it's up to you. And I think that was the common theme that we see through all the presidents that we highlighted is it's up to you. How much hard work, how much tenacity do you have, and what do you want to build? How productive of a citizen do you want to be? And let's not forget, what John F. Kennedy said. Ask not what you or your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And I think that's a great quote because I think there's too many people in society today that are asking, well, what can the government do for me? Well, wait a minute. How about you do for yourself, and then if you have the means, you do for the country. And along the way, even if you don't get super successful and you're not a billionaire like Trump or some of the other politicians who can directly contribute to the country, you're contributing as you climb your ladder of success up, because you're either employing people or you're bringing in more capital, paying more tax dollars, etc. You're creating waves within your environment and through society as a whole. And I think that's extremely important.
Yep, I completely agree. And let's face it, we need to get America sane again. So after tomorrow, that debate, we'll see how sane or insane we feel. And hopefully we can start seeing some pro-American happy days, because this is kind of crazy, wouldn't you say?
I definitely agree. It is extremely crazy. And I think the debate tomorrow is going to be, like I pointed out before, it's going to be an extremely entertaining, hopefully it's going to be an extremely enlightening debate. Going back over the topics just because I want to do a quick wrap up. The sixth topic we discussed in the debate is going to be immigration, entitlements and debt, the Supreme Court, the economy, foreign policy, and then, of course, each candidate's fitness to serve as president. So those topics are going to be central. They're going to be core to what it means to be president. You could have bypassed the other two debates completely and landed on this one. And I think these are the real hot button issues that has the most discussions on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, etc. You pick any one of these topics and you're going to start a never-ending discussion.
And I think it's kind of, in that last one, fitness to serve as president. I mean, I'm not going to go and say that either one does not have the fitness to serve as president. This almost seems like a smoke and mirrors topic where, they are trying to take the focus off of the real problems and the real concerns. Because, fitness to serve, I mean, can you make decisions? Each one can make decisions. It's who's going to make the pro-American decisions and the good decisions for all the people, and who is going to pander towards special interests. That's really kind of false. So we'll see what happens tomorrow.
Yeah, it's not like they're running a marathon. I mean, realistically speaking, you can sit in the Oval Office every day for the rest of your days as a president and run everything. As long as you are of sharp mind and you can make decisions, you need to rely on your delegation of authority and to your subject matter experts. You're fine, and that's the question. So I think you're right.
I would say there's one last thing I'd like to add, is that what I've noticed is this administration has been reactive. What we need is a proactive government. Let's find out who's going to be proactive, and that means concerning military, defense, the economy. Who's going to be able to react before things happen and have the foresight and have the right consultants to give us the good decisions, and who will not be stopped at making the right decision. That's going to be really important. Proactive versus reactive.
I completely agree. You've got to have some proactive thought processes there. So, and with that, I think we're going to wrap up this edition of the program. Any last words, Rob?
I am ready for tomorrow. We will see you then, and the next podcast, we will be commenting on how that went.
Yes, of course. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter or find us on Facebook. We're going to be live tweeting on Twitter tomorrow night, and have a wonderful day.